Hello and welcome to the Empowered CPA podcast. I am your host, Dawn Scott. Today I have a very special guest with me. She has done so much in our last year together. Some of her highlights are in her first full year of business. She has created 2 online courses, and she's also served many, many people through them. She launched a podcast with support of a team where she's published 38 episodes and received over 27,000 downloads. She's done 20 speaking engagements and co-authored a book. To say that your last year has been packed full would be, I think, an understatement. So everybody welcome Dr. Adia Gooden.
Thanks so much for having me, Dawn. I'm happy to be here.
I am super excited. So how about you give everybody a background of the amazing things that you've done. You're just such a gift, and I'm so excited to share you.
Okay, so I'm a clinical psychologist, and my primary focus is helping people to embrace their unconditional self-worth. And last year, in like the end of February, I took a leap and decided to go out on my own and work for myself. And so I started building some online courses and programs and doing speaking and creating a podcast, all to help people embrace their unconditional self-worth. And it's been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of learning. And I really also enjoyed working with you, Dawn, in the process, because I think, my thinking from the beginning was I'm an expert in what I'm an expert in. I'm an expert in terms of mental health and self-worth and those sorts of things. I know how to do that, but I am not an expert in finance and accounting and financial planning and all of those things that you need to make sure that your business is successful and sustainable. And so I've been really grateful to be able to work with you over the course of this last year.
Thank you. It's been super fun. So I think one thing that is amazing from our very beginning of our relationship is you came to me knowing that, which is so much different than what I usually see, and just such a breath of fresh air, because we were really able to sit down before you left and make some really solid plans for you, along the lines of, these are the things that we know you're going to have when you leave. These are the things that you're working on and the possible timelines. And then these are, the expenses that go along with that. And then, I think one of the biggest things that we had to overcome was how self-employment taxes are different than W-2 employment taxes. And so it was so nice to be able to do that proactively and make sure that it was a pretty seamless process for you. And so that was a great way to start your business as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely someone who, I don't need to learn the hard way. I'm definitely somebody who, if I hear something or I hear about, this person hasn't paid their taxes for 10 years and now they, have all this mess, or they have to do forensic accounting. And, when I hear about stuff like that, I'm not somebody who's I'll be fine on my own. I'm oh, actually, let's prevent that. And there's no way I want to experience that. And so
I appreciate
because of that, I was I need to find an accountant. From the beginning, I am not, getting into a mess. And I could see how that can happen so easily, because you did help me with the small business taxes, and I didn't know. So I was, doing speaking gigs and like that before I left my job full time. And I didn't know that I should have been paying my taxes. I don't know how you're supposed to know that, but I didn't know that. And so it meant that I had a decent sized tax bill when you did my taxes. And so that was you could see in 1 year of working part-time for myself while having a full-time job and not paying taxes. I could just see how that easily can get out of control for people. And so I so appreciated having your support. And then, you encouraged me to apply for a PPP loan, and that really helped and supported. And so there's just been so many benefits that I wouldn't have known about, I didn't know about through working with you.
Oh, it's been fun. It's, I joke, but I always leave our conversation so inspired. And it's just, I help people in a way, but I think the way that I see you helping people is so important. And just the service that you provide and the guidance you provide to your clients is just such a magical thing. And I'm happy that I can support that in my own special way.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I really do.
So I think the next super exciting thing that we are working on, and something that a lot of people go through and experience, and something that I've experienced twice, is that we are currently working on your maternity planning.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the big benefit of working for myself is that I can take maternity leave as I would like to, right? So I can sort of make it as long or short as I would like it to be. And I really have control over that. I think the biggest downside is that there is no such thing as paid maternity leave, right? Like there's no such thing as someone else paying me while I'm taking time off to care for my baby. So it's been really helpful to think about, okay, financially, what does it look like to sustain some things that I have, going on, operating expenses that will be present in the business? And what does it look like to save up so that I can still pay myself something while I'm, out and not generating revenue, so that it's not just like a total dry spell. And it's been really helpful, I would say, both on a financial level, as well as sort of like you've provided so much guidance in terms of thinking about like operationally, like who needs to be contacted or who needs to be emailed and how is that going to be happening? And, if you go into labor early, like what's the process going to be? And it's really just helped me kind of think through a lot of those things so that I'm not like, you know, about to go into labor and also freaking out that what's going to happen to my business and I haven't set up anything
Right.
while I'm away.
Sending emails between contractions. So
Right. That
yeah, not ideal.
exactly.
So I've actually
Exactly.
been through this process twice. I have two little ones. And my first time I worked for a company, so I was a W-2 employee. And then the second time I was self-employed. So I have quite a range of experiences in this particular situation. And I will say that when with my first, when I was employed by someone, it was, my husband, I gave him my manager's phone number and said, when it's time and I'm not going to work tomorrow, I need you to just email this person or contact this person, and they will handle everything. They just plug somebody else in, and away you go. And then
Hmm.
my email gets turned off until I return on, a date 3 months from the date I decided to leave. And my experience as a self-employed person was much different. So when you and I started talking about this, you're like, well, my husband will contact in your case, my VA. And I'm like, well, how?
Hmm.
Does does
Hmm.
does he know her phone? Does he know her phone number? Does he
Right.
know her email? Does he know any of that? And that's one of those moments where you're like, oh, like we have so much in our brain, and we're like, oh, well, this will just happen. It's like, but how, right? So that was, I think, our first
Hmm.
step, was identifying all of the vital, critical things that you do and ensuring that
Yeah.
somebody knows how to do that once they're like notified.
Right. 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 Exactly. Because if you're working for a organization or a company, there's probably a lot of people who could fill in or figure out or
Mm-hmm.
whatever to keep things running. But when you're, working for yourself and it's me and then I have a VA and there's like a, podcast management team that I work with as well, it's like if I'm not doing something, like I direct everything. And so there's no one to fill in for me unless I've sort of already said, okay, this is how you'll manage the email, or this is how, these things will go. But you have to sort of put that in place, and not just kind of expect that it'll magically happen. And I think, especially also because I think most businesses are they have some clients or customers, but it's like I have clients, I have, people that I'm working with. And so it's important that I not just drop off, and disappear, because that's not good for, it's just not good for the type of support that I want to provide. And so creating systems and processes to make sure that things go smoothly. And of course, I'll be talking to people and saying, this is the due date, but this is, the baby may come earlier, maybe come at a different time. But having all of that set up, I think, is really important. And it gives me peace of mind as well.
Which is so important. I mean, this process, having a baby has its own set of emotions, and you can't control most of those. So having something that you can control, at least for me, was really important. And so, when we established who your husband was going to contact, I think the next thing that we really worked on was, what are the vital things that need to be carried on while you're out, adjusting to your new family. But then once we figured that out, what does it look like when you come back? You don't want to come back to crickets, right? So
Right.
so establishing first and foremost, what are the tasks, what are the systems that need to go on, and then identifying, who's doing what, but also the financial aspects around that. This is how much we need for your family, and how do the reserves look like for that. So identifying those critical things was a process.
Right. Yeah. And I think just like planning it out and, you know, being reasonable. Like I don't do well, I don't like operating from a space of like scarcity or fear. Like that just doesn't align with like how I like to operate. So I'm not, I've had some conversations in a membership community I'm in, and there's somebody who keeps being like, you're going to run out of money. And I just sort of put that aside. I'm like, I don't believe I will, and I'm not going to do that. And I also think like I'm working closely with you and thinking about, okay, what are the expenses, and overshooting that some, so that so that there is cushion, right? So it's like, okay, if I want 3 months, do I have 4 months of salary and 4 months of operating expenses if I don't make anything, with the first month I'm back, let's say. And so, I'm planning for that, not with a lot of like anxiety and fear, but with just kind of an understanding that there'll be some low months, and then we'll, get back to generating revenue when I'm, back fully in the swing of things. And I'm going to be automating some posts and emails and things like that, so that I don't lose sort of the connection that I've built with my audience while I'm away.
Right. So for you, you'll be away, you'll be enjoying your time, but your audience is going to know that you're out, but they're going to still see you enough to keep you, in their realm of, their ethos.
Exactly.
So then I think the next thing that we kind of worked through was, there are certain things that you need to operate your business as far as expenses are concerned. And some of those are, subscriptions that you have to have just to keep things going through the time you're out. But then some things are possible to be, paused and then restarted at a later date. So identifying those was a really good exercise to ensure that you're not spending money on something that you don't necessarily have to be during that time. And you're also identifying those critical expenses, which is just a good practice in general.
Right. Exactly. And just, yeah, paying attention to what I am paying for. And, for both I think I would say my biggest expenses are my VA and the podcast management team. And for both of those, while I'll continue to pay them, partly because my VA is going to continue to manage some stuff while I'm away, and the podcast management team, the way it's set up is that it's not a start sort of stop thing, but the rate is reduced when you're not sort of actively producing podcasts. And so I know that those expenses will go down, which is helpful. Even though that'll still be part of my operating expenses. And then, yeah, thinking about, okay, what are the other sort of software and things that I use that I won't be using, that I can pause, or maybe even stop, has been helpful as well, to sort of cut costs that are unnecessary.
Exactly. And even just pregnancy aside, this is something that is a good exercise once or twice a year anyways. I think a lot of people sign up, and I'm probably guilty of this too. A lot of us sign up for things we're like, oh, it's $30 a month or, whatever. And you get
Hmm.
a couple of those, and I got to tell you, those add up really quickly. And then, a year goes by and you're like, gosh, I haven't logged into that forever. And, $1,200 has gone by.
Right.
So it is a good exercise, even if you're not actively planning a leave of some sort, just to identify those things and make sure that, you don't have legacy things that you're paying for, that you've moved on from or decided to go a different route from. And so it's just good from a budgeting perspective in general.
Yeah, I agree. And why I appreciate having QuickBooks that's set up through you, because it sort of forces me to take a look, and then I sort of have a task every 2 weeks to just go through all the, transactions
Hmm.
and kind of see what's happening
We
so
relive
that
it.
right. Well, and look, like, okay, am I paying for something that I'm like, what is this? Or, am I not getting, money paid or whatever that I expect? And so it helps me to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on things.
Mhm. It also, while we're talking about QuickBooks, or any accounting software that you use, it also helps you keep track of who owes you money, because there's a very good chance that when you do end up going on maternity leave, there will be outstanding money owed to you, money receivables type
Hmm.
things. So having that, even if it is a couple months between when you leave and when you come back, just knowing that those are out there, that's important too. That's if those go dormant, that's a big miss as well. So having the other side of that, the money owed to you, is also very important.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. And um, I have some payment plans happening for my online programs. And so that's the other thing is, occasionally somebody will, they're change their credit card or they won't pay. And so the other thing that I've done is, my VA is going to help me with that. So if that happens, we have a workflow and some emails that she'll send to sort of make sure that those payments start coming in and aren't just left because
Right.
there's nobody following up about, a missed payment or something like that.
Right. And as much as I like to think people are good in heart, when people don't hear follow-ups for a couple months, a lot of times people are like, oh, I must not owe that. So that
Hmm.
is one thing that's super important as well to keep tabs of. And again, that's not just for maternity or leave purposes, but just business in general. Having your invoicing all in one place has been helpful for you to keep that income coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just, yeah, having systems, making sure it's organized, all of that, I just think helps so much because, there's a lot of moving pieces and it's easy to sort of miss things or overlook them. And then that can create an issue.
Exactly. And I think, wow, I feel you're ready. I don't want you to go into labor for a while, but if you were to go into labor, I think your systems are all there. But no matter how good our planning is, there's going to be something, but if you can minimize the severity of whatever that something is,
Hmm.
or at least have had the conversations with your support team to say, this is my goal of maternity. Like, some people are different. I don't want you to contact me unless it's reached, a 9 out of 10 type thing.
Hmm.
If you think you can handle this on your own using your professional judgment, which is what I hire you for, then do that. And so even just having those communications, because some people are the opposite of that. They want to still be in control. And so knowing where those parameters are and communicating those parameters sets everybody up for success based on kind of their individual needs.
Yep. Yep. I agree. I agree. Yeah. Versus assuming that people should just know where you're at. And I think, for me, and we talked about this, like, I want the flexibility so that if I want to engage in the business and I want to do work that I can, and that's an option for me, but I also don't have to.
Hmm.
So that's, sort of the piece that um, am wanting to kind of have. So I don't feel like I'm tied in and, you know, a lot of things are going on that I really need to be involved in. But if I want to, I can do some work on the business. And that's what
Exactly.
I'm setting myself up for.
Right. And I think we talked about this week was perceived, how you perceive this. Like, I get to do this or I want to do this feels very different than, oh my gosh, I am having a heck of a morning, but I
Hmm.
have to be at this thing. So setting yourself up to not have or have less of those, things you don't want to be doing is going to
Yep.
make your recovery and your excitement to come back even just better.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I
And
agree for
you know,
sure.
like once all these things are handled, you have a handle on, your systems are in place for when you go out, what expenses are staying and what are going, and kind of what income you're expecting while you're out. Then I think the thing that you transition into and the thing we're kind of working on setting up for you is what happens when you come back, right? If
Hmm.
something in your situation, if someone's been reaching out trying to get you for a speaking engagement, that is something that you can have systems set up to where when you come back, those are on the calendar, and then you're stepping back in to a calendar of things that are income generating. And so also with some flexibility, right? Planning out
Right.
how you re-enter, and part of that re-entry is not really knowing the person you're going to necessarily be when you re-enter, because this is a big life change.
Hmm.
And
Right.
and so but that also gives you some comfort knowing I'm coming back into this environment and these are my income sources, and planning that reentry.
Right. Exactly. Not feeling like I'm coming back and I have no idea
Right.
how I'm going to make money or where the next, income generating thing is coming from. So I agree. Having some plan, and I'm doing some work now to set things up well so that there isn't, a big gap when I return.
Exactly. Yeah, it's such a I mean, I feel like I tell you this all the time and you probably are tired of it, but it's such an exciting time in your life, and it's an exciting time not only as just you the person, but you and your family unit, and how everything changes, and you just never know how you're going to feel, or what's
Hmm.
we were joking yesterday, right? Like if your kid's going to sleep, which I hope for you.
Right.
I hope you don't have the type
I
of
hope
sleepers I
so.
had. Yeah. But it really, all of those things and your support and all of those really affect your mindset and your excitement to come back to somewhat of your new normal is probably
Hmm.
the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I very much agree.
It's just, and being you're a year in, so I think you're getting to a very solid cadence where you know what to expect. Your income is very steady and it's not volatile at all, and you're growing every month. And so this is just one of those planning parts where we plan nicely here, and then you rejoin and you just kind of pick up from where you started, and you keep carrying it forward. And that's really the goal, right? Is to just keep the trajectory of the last year and then keep moving forward.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That is the hope, that this is this doesn't disrupt the trajectory that I'm on. It, maybe slows it down a little bit, right? There's a shift, but it's not sort of totally disruptive of what I've built and been working on over the last year.
Well, and I think another thing we've talked about is you've really taken an industry that is, when you go through all of your education, which you've been through a lot of education, you are really kind of working towards a very specific end goal, right? Your one-on-one clients, you build this practice. That is your profession, and that is what you do. Mine's very similar, right? We are all put through the ringer to get one outcome. And I think
Hmm.
over the course of the last year, you've kind of taken a step back and taken a different look and said, I can take this knowledge and I can take this experience and I can change it and offer it in a different way. And I think that your ability to transform something is going to be even more important in this next phase of your life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, and I'm excited about it. I think I'm just getting started and just sort of getting my feet wet in this online world. And so I'm excited about kind of the possibilities and what I'm able to build and do while also, you know, being, creating a sustainable business and a sustainable and enjoyable lifestyle. And I really appreciate that as well about working for myself is that, I get to decide how much or little I do and how quickly or slowly I go so that I can do it with a sense of balance, with a sense of ease, which is really important to me.
But I also think it ties into, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your, even your group coaching, because I think your group coaching is so important. And I also think you live what you teach. So why don't you tell us and everybody about your current courses and the things that you help people work through, because it does play a lot into how you are structuring your life. And I also just find it really fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Like I do believe that it's really important that I live what I teach
It's important.
because if I'm like stressed and overwhelmed and overworked and I'm telling people that I help them get out of that,
Right.
that there's going to be a disconnect there. So, in my group coaching program, which is really my signature program, I help people on their journeys to embrace their unconditional self-worth. And what we're doing is really sort of I'm helping people to sort of release patterns and habits that have kept them stuck. And so many of these things are things that we're socialized into. So people often really struggle with self-criticism, beating themselves up, pushing themselves too far, right? So that's where we get the overworking, the perfectionism, feeling really unhappy with themselves and their lives, and just not feeling like, they're showing up and sharing their gifts and shining in the way that they would most desire. And so we work on, self compassion and releasing self criticism, right? And I'm drawing on my clinical training and my clinical experience to offer research backed, evidence based strategies that help with these things, that help to alleviate self criticism, help people to release it, help people to alleviate anxiety and symptoms of depression and things like that. Then we also work through self forgiveness because so often people feel like, well, I would be worthy if this thing, if I didn't do this thing, if I didn't make this mistake, if I didn't have this failure, etc. And so we work through a process that helps people to release that and forgive themselves so that they can take the wisdom from the experience, but not be stuck with the burden of beating themselves up for something that they did in the past that they now regret. We work through self love and self acceptance, right? So often we're very focused on, um, you know, who, what's wrong with us, right? That ties into self criticism. But what's wrong with us? What do we need to change? What do we need to improve? And in this part, we sort of think about, well, what's right with you? What do you love about yourself? And how can you show yourself love and care and kindness, in a powerful way? We also talk about relationships and how to build healthy, authentic relationships and let go of toxic ones. We talk about connecting to your internal wisdom and your values so that you can allow that to guide you forward instead of the anxieties, or the worries about what other people will think. And so it's a really kind of intentional, deep dive into this journey. And the feedback that I get from group members is that it really helps to connect the dots of things that they didn't, like, they knew that something was off but they didn't quite know what exactly they needed to address, um, and help them to really shift the way they show up for themselves and engage with themselves and engage in their lives.
It's incredible. I just think it's so necessary, and when someone is, brave enough or acknowledges enough to know that this is somewhere that they need to be, I think that there's just so much benefit that comes out of this type of information, and it affects all aspects of your life, not just, your relationships or any of that. It's everything. And
Yes.
I think it's just such a valuable service that you're sharing. And I'm so like excited to be a part of it in my own nerdy way.
Thank you. Yeah, I love doing it. I really do enjoy it. I mean, I'm just passionate about people, embracing who they are fully, and I think that that's the best foundation for showing up and sharing your gifts with the world. And I think the world's a better place when everybody feels worthy and shows up as such. And so I'm passionate about helping to make that happen in any way that I can.
And I know that you've also graced a TEDx stage, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So I did a TEDx talk in 2018. So it's kind of hard to believe that it is like basically almost 4 years ago now,
That's
exactly.
wild.
And I talked about cultivating unconditional self-worth and, sort of these core pieces that I base my online courses and programs on now. And it's been amazing to just see the response to the talk. So now there are over 950,000 views,
Wow.
which is really cool. I'm inching towards a million views,
Oh
which
my
is
gosh.
so exciting.
That's incredible.
Um, no, I know. So that feels really good. And, I think it's something that not a lot of people are talking about. And so it feels really good to know that it's resonating, to get messages from people who, have listened to the TEDx talk and, hear about how much it's resonated with them. And that really, keeps me going and inspires me and makes me feel like, yes, this is a message that needs to be out in the world. That's part of why I started the podcast, which is called Unconditionally Worthy, and helps people to really think about this idea of self worth and how it impacts so many aspects of our lives, and providing strategies and tools that you can use on your self worth journey.
Absolutely. I've contributed to your downloads, and I tell everyone I meet to watch your TEDx. It's so important, and the information is just it's life changing. And again, it's incredible. And so tell everyone listening, if they wanted to join your course or join your group coaching, how do they find you? And mind you, now or after maternity
Thanks. Yeah. So, my website is a great place to start. This is drdiagooden.com. There you'll be able to just sort of learn more about me. In addition to the group coaching program, so the group coaching program is going to launch the next cohort in September. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up for the waiting list on my website. I also have an online course that's a more sort of do it yourself, which is kind of available for you to enroll at any time. It's called Date Yourself and really focuses on helping you to build a healthy relationship with yourself. So you can also find information about that on my website and enroll. And I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Adia Gooden. I post a lot about self worth and things like that. And then if you're sort of curious about this whole self worth thing, self worth journey, I have a free ebook on 4 practices to get you started on your self worth journey. And that can be found on my website, dradiagooden.com/free with 3 E's dash book. So drdiagooden.com/free dash book. And you can sign up to receive that there.
That's fantastic. I can't tell you how good of an investment that would be. I just even working with you, I know that if you're even considering it, I think you should head on over there and take a look. You won't be disappointed. And I just can't thank you enough for joining me today. This has been super fun.
Thank you so much for having me. This has
Of
been
course.
great.
Yes, and I hope that you have lots of good traffic, and I hope that people come and see the goodness that you're sharing with the world. And to everybody listening, thank you for joining us. It has been such a pleasure. And you can get us, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and anywhere else you enjoy your shows.